Welcome back to my channel. I'm Joe, Smokin Joe's Pit Barbecue. On today's video, I'm going to be smoking a brisket in a way that just might get me kicked out of Texas. Stay tuned.
You can see, look at this bark. It's crazy.
Oh man, this is perfect.
It helps to start with a nice sharp knife, okay?
Oh my goodness. Look at that. All right, so before I start trimming on this beautiful brisket from Midland Meat Company, which you guys will see in a minute, I'm gonna be smoking this brisket on my Yoda Frontiersman, and I'm only gonna be using one ingredient. And that one ingredient is this really high-end salt from France called Fleur de Sel. Now, I watch a channel called Pitmaster X. I don't know if you guys are subscribed to his channel or not, but check him out. I'm gonna leave a link up here so you guys can check him out after this video. So Pitmaster X uses this salt on a lot of his videos, and he cooks with a lot of high-end meat, so I figured, you know what? I really wanna taste a good beef brisket, but only use salt and enjoy the flavor of the brisket itself, plus the smoke of the post oak that I'm gonna be using in my Frontiersman. So this Fleur de Sel is used a lot as a finishing salt, so I'm gonna dry brine this brisket with nothing but salt overnight, and once I slice that brisket, I'm gonna put a little bit of the salt on the face of that brisket just to bring out that really good beef flavor. Stay tuned. All right, so here's our beautiful dry aged brisket from Midland Meat Company. And look at that marbling. I mean, this is just a beautiful cut of beef. I gotta tell you, I've smoked a lot of Midland Meat Company briskets already, and I believe that Midland Meat Company has the finest beef that I've ever tasted. So essentially, you could smoke this brisket just as is, but it does have a little bit more fat than I like in some areas. So I'm just gonna clean this up. Now, primarily, I use two knives when I trim my brisket. This is my boning knife, okay? And then I've got a chef's knife. These knives are extremely sharp, and I gotta tell you, they definitely get the job done. So what am I gonna do to this brisket that already looks pretty well trimmed? I'm just gonna remove some of this fat right here, some of the fat that's on the top of the brisket, and let's take a look at that fat cap. Yeah, maybe trim the fat cap down just a little bit. I'm also gonna trim this edge right here, just so I have a nice fresh edge. All right, so right here, I'd like to take my boning knife, and one of the things that you wanna do with a brisket is keep it as aerodynamic as possible, okay? Which means no corners, no hard edges, kind of like this. Man, look at the marbling on this point right here. This is a beautiful looking brisket. Okay, I'm not gonna be doing a whole lot of trimming. In fact, that's all I'm gonna do right here. Just gonna clean the top. Let me turn this brisket around so you guys can see it. So this fat right here, you don't wanna mess with this fat seam right here. Just leave that alone, but this pocket right here, I do wanna remove. Again, use a nice sharp knife. I'm gonna trim just a little bit of this, okay, because this piece right here is gonna be pointing towards my firebox. So I want some of this fat to protect that brisket point. So just a little bit. Just expose some of that nice white fat, just like that. Okay, that looks beautiful right there. Get rid of this corner. Okay, again, nice and round, nice and aerodynamic. Now I did place this brisket in my freezer for about 30 minutes, so it's a little bit frozen right here, and that's okay. I think it's much easier to trim a partially frozen brisket than it is a room temperature brisket, and that's for sure. Okay. Now this sharp corner, when you have a corner like this, just cut that corner right off, okay? Then you can trim and make it nice and round. Just trim this edge like this. Very little trimming, okay? See how we got that round corner now? That's what we want right there. This side as well. Just these little differences. Trust me, you guys might think that it doesn't make a whole lot of difference if you cut that corner off or not, but it really does, because that corner will block the heat from the rest of that brisket, believe it or not. All right, that looks really good. We turn this to the other side. Just gonna clean up some of this fat right here. All right, so I'd like to start here at the bottom. I'm gonna start with probably 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch of trim. And we'll see what that looks like afterwards. All right, this brisket looks really good. I'm just gonna clean up the cutting board, wash my hands, and we'll be right back. All right, let's season our brisket. Again, I am going Pitmaster X style on this brisket, fleur de sel. Just gonna apply a light coating. And I tasted this out of the container and it's got a really good earthy flavor. It's got some really big granules you'll see as I start laying it on that brisket. Okay. I don't want to go too heavy because I am going to apply some on the slices after I slice up the brisket. Just enough. I mean, this is a big piece of meat, okay? But just not overly salty. So I'm going to apply a good amount on the top. Then I'm going to pat this down. Now this salt is also going to draw the moisture from that brisket. I'm preparing this the night before. So it's going to sit in my fridge overnight. I'm not going to cover it. And I'm also not going to open up that door to the fridge. So we'll see what the color looks like tomorrow morning. Okay, just like that. I'm going to pat it down. And part of the reason why I'm letting this sit in my fridge overnight is because I want that salty flavor to really get into that meat. I'm going to salt the fat cap as well. All right, that looks really good right there. This is going to sit in my fridge overnight. We'll see you guys tomorrow morning at my Yoder Frontiersman. Stay tuned.
All right, so it's the very next morning, 7 o'clock in the morning to be exact. I'm outside at my Yoder Frontiersman. I do have my pit running at 250 degrees. Now I am smoking a brisket, that's for a customer, so we're not gonna focus on that brisket too much. So here's our Midland meat Wagyu right here. Again, with nothing but fleur de sel. And I'm gonna go ahead and put that in there as well. Fat cap down. Just right here. Go. All right, so the brisket's gonna smoke for 2 hours without opening the door, and I'm really interested to see if we're gonna develop a nice spark. I think we will, but only time will tell. So we'll see you guys in 2 hours. Stay tuned. All right, so it's been 2 hours since we put our briskets on. Let's take a look at it. Interesting. Okay, so obviously that brisket back there, that's for a customer, seasoned, and it's creating a bark already. Now this one right here, on the other hand, there's no bark whatsoever. But I'm really liking the color of that brisket, just the color of beef pretty much. So again, 2 hours into it, usually around the 4 or 5 hour mark is when I wrap a brisket. We'll come back in about 2 hours, take a look at the color, and I will not be spritzing this brisket, but I will be spritzing that brisket back there with apple cider vinegar and water. Again, this video is not about that brisket over there, it's about this one right here. So we'll see you guys in 2 hours. Stay tuned. All right, so it's been 5 hours now, and my pit is running at 250 on the top gauge. It did come down to about 215 on the bottom gauge, but I just dropped another split of wood. Let's take a look at our brisket. Wow, that is really interesting. So there is no bark on this brisket. It just has a nice, dark, rich color, kind of a beefy color, if you will. And obviously you can see that one on the back. That's got a more traditional Texas rub on it. But this one is really interesting. I'm really liking that color. I've never seen anything like that. So let me lift this up so you guys can get a little bit closer look. Man, it is juicy and jiggly. Look at that thing. Very interesting color. Again, nothing but salt. So we're at 5 hours. This is when I normally wrap, but I do want to get an internal temperature and see where we're at right here on the point. Oh man, that is like butter. 182 degrees. 183 after 5 hours. Let's check this flat right here. Actually, I'm going to check it right here in the middle somewhere. 160, about 161 on the flat. And this point, man, it feels really tender. 190. So at this point, we don't have a long way to go, but I'm going to go ahead and wrap it. So I'm just going to wrap this brisket up in butcher paper. I'll bring you guys right back. All right, so I've got the brisket wrapped up, and usually from this point, it takes an additional 3 hours. So we'll be back in 2 hours and get an internal temperature of this brisket. I'm gonna keep my pit running at 250 degrees. Stay tuned.
All right, so our brisket is ready. Total cook time was 9 hours, and this beautiful brisket from Midland Meat Company is ready. So I'm just gonna take it out of the butcher paper and see how we did. You guys ready for this? Holy smokes. I gotta tell you, it smells extremely beefy, okay? That is the one word that I can explain the aroma that is coming from this brisket. It's very interesting. It shrunk down. Man, this is like jello. Look at this, okay? Now, it did shrink down like a normal brisket, but as you can see, I don't have that Texas bark that I normally get on my brisket. So I'm gonna take this out of the wrapper and put it on my cutting board. All right, so here's our beautiful brisket, and it smells really good in here. I gotta tell you, I have never smelled anything so beefy in my life. Again, there's no seasoning other than the salt that we used. So I'm just gonna take a couple of slices and see how we did. Now this edge is usually pretty tough, but I'll still eat this, okay? And right out of the gate, we have a beautiful smoke ring. Now we did smoke this fat cap down. Beautiful slices here. I gotta tell you, it's slicing really good. Let me pull this slice out here. Look at that. Good smoke ring as well. That fat really rendered nicely. All right, let's check out the point. Usually right around here. See how jiggly that brisket is? Oh yeah. Look at that. Really nice and juicy. Good smoke ring. I can't wait to taste this. I'm gonna slice this up and I'll bring you guys right back. All right, I've got the brisket sliced up. Now I am gonna use a little bit of the salt, the fleur de sel, just to top the brisket. Give it that little extra kick because again, this is a really thick piece of meat and I think it's gonna need that additional salt flavor. Now again, this salt was originally made as a finishing salt, which is what we're doing right here, okay? All right, let's give it a taste. All right, so I've got the brisket sliced up and the moment of truth is here. Just gonna grab a slice and see how we did on this juicy brisket. I mean, look at this cutting board. It's a good thing it has that juice catcher because it is completely filled, okay? So this is an extremely moist and tender brisket, I gotta tell you that. So I'm gonna give some to my daughter. Here you go, baby. Wait for me. All right. Man, this is juicy. Here we go. Cheers. What in the world? That is really good. You like it? Mm-hmm. Man. Like I'm not even kidding, okay? This brisket right here has so much flavor. This is ridiculous. I'm gonna give it another shot. No way. This cannot be. I've smoked a lot of briskets and I've never had one this tasty before. Really good beef flavor, right? It's hard to explain. You know, I've got that flavor from the smoke. That salt is not overpowering. In fact, that salt just adds character to the brisket. But I am extremely happy. Look at this, my hands are dripping. But this is really good. I mean, what do you think, baby?
It tastes really good. Better.
Better with better like this than with all the seasonings that I normally use. So you gotta think about this, guys and girls that are watching my video. When you add seasoning, you're really changing the flavor of that beef. Now, would I try this with a prime? I would try this with a prime. Now, I probably wouldn't try this with a select brisket. I would get a good high-end brisket like this one from Midland Meat Company. Now, the other thing that I do want to talk about is this smoke ring on this brisket is insane. I know you guys want to pull test, but look at that, okay? So it pulls apart extremely easy, okay? Look at this, no effort whatsoever. But this smoke ring is almost purple, okay? It's so bright. There's no filter on my camera, I promise you guys, but this is really good. On a scale of 1 to 10, what would you give this brisket? Like a 10. Like a 10? Like a 10 or like a solid 10?
Solid 10.
I'm with my daughter. This is really tasty. I am gonna leave a link in the description box on where you can get yourself some of this salt and try this. I guarantee you, you will absolutely love it. I'm also gonna be leaving links on where you can buy some of the knives that I use and this awesome cutting board that's catching all these juices from this beautiful brisket. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I gotta tell you, I would give this a shot. Thanks for watching. Until next time, Joe with Smokin Joe's Spit Barbecue. See ya.